So let's talk about snow, the cold stuff, the white stuff that we don't get in Florida. By the way, this is Advent Calendar entry day 2 of the Winter Mythos Advent Calendar, and we're going to discuss Yuki-onna, commonly called the Snow Woman or the Lady of the Snow. This is a Japanese folklore urban legend that still is very much alive today. They say it predates the Muromachi period, so this goes back to medieval Japan kind of vibes. But there's a lot of tales of this lady. She is paler than me, and that says a lot. She's white as snow, right? And she's very cold to the touch. She appears usually in the snowstorm and blizzards, right? Which I think is a very important aspect. You know, we talked about, the old hag and how she brings the bad weather. This would be a creature that then takes said bad weather and starts to hunt within it, right? Which is kind of spooky. But she is said to be beautiful, and she usually is portrayed in a white kimono or naked even. And it's interesting because those descriptions are pretty much the stable, right? Her skin's white as snow, really dark, lustrous, long black hair, and her lips are blue, which is that indication that she's cold or dead even. Whether or not she doesn't leave footsteps behind in the snow, and sometimes she can speak, sometimes she can't, and she kind of floats. Sometimes they say her body is translucent, so she's more like a phantom, a ghost. Other times she's very real. She's just pasty and questionable at best. So much so that the stories vary drastically for her. One of the simplest story about Yuki-onna is that she shows up at the door of a man's home, begs him to marry her, and of course it's hard for him to resist. She's so beautiful, but he marries her, and as the days, the weeks, the months go by, he realizes his wife's not bathing. She's he's got problems. She never takes a bath, and by this point they've had several children, so we're talking years of living with this mysterious maiden that he's married. And there's two ways that this story sort of ends, and it's interesting. One is that he realizes this is the snow woman that froze his master to death, and that he escaped, and that she had sworn she would come after him and kill him. And she starts to cry because she says, I threatened to kill you if you ever told anyone, but I'm the snow woman and you've only told me. And we have these wonderful children, and in order to protect you, the children, and then they say that she just burst into a cold wind, or a flurry of snowflakes, right? Other variations say they don't have kids. He basically forces her, or pressures her into taking a bath, and she melts in the hot bath, and all is left is crystals, or icicles and things like that. But this is more the tamer side of Yuki-onna. So with that said, there are variations where she's a vengeful spirit. More modern variations of her involve the fact that this is a woman who was deceived and then murdered, and now she's taking it out on everybody during winter time, right? That's more of the modern tales, very much like the Ring kind of vibe, and sort of you get the white and the dark hair, right? So we've seen this portrayal of a phantom woman. She's also considered a variant of the woman in white, which is a worldwide phenomenon, cryptid urban legend, which is pretty amazing because she's been around for so long. Despite all that, they say that sometimes she tricks her way into your house, and then you realize she's cold to the touch, and then she'll you know, again, in a flurry of magic, wind or snow of some sort, go out the door, the window, up the chimney like Santa Claus. So it's interesting how these winter deities and figures have a lot in common. But she's also been known to be a vampire, which we know how much I love vampires and vampire lore. But yes, she is known as a snow vampire. In the tales and stories involving more of a vampire aspect of her, she is said to live or prowl or hunt in a snowy forest, she only appears during the winter months and sleeps away during the warm months. Maybe that's because, you know, heat and dead bodies doesn't mix, so maybe there's something to that. But despite that, she's a energy draining vampire. She's said to drain the bodies of their vital energy, their psyche, a term that you guys probably hear a lot in animation and manga and things like that. The Snow Woman does have a presence in modern anime and stuff. You see her in video games quite a bit. That includes animes like Yo-Yo Hakusho, Yu-Gi-Oh uses her, and even Pokemon. If you don't recall, and I think it might be going on now, Frostlass. She's a derivative and inspired by this Yuki-onna. There are different Yuki types with different endings depending if she's the old hag or a beautiful young maiden. And yes, she goes both ways, which is very similar to Biara. I'm not going to even try. But despite that, when the snow vampire Yuki-onna, she will lure a man or a woman and kiss them to drain them until they're frozen to death. Or steal children. She loves to steal children who are playing way too late on snowy nights. And again, this all goes back to that core cautionary tale that people are trying to make it clear that if it's snowing outside, if there's a blizzard, or it's nighttime and this cold, you have no business being out there because you're gonna die. You're gonna freeze to death. I think the scariest tale involves her calling out. A snowstorm has started, and you realize there is a poor woman holding a child out in the snowstorm. You go to her to see what the matter is. Does she need help? And she asks you to hold the child. The child's too cold. Please help me warm the child. So you take this child, and she hugs onto you, and you're hugging the child and trying to keep this cold bundle warm. And the child ever gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And the snow landing on you gets heavier and heavier and heavier. Until before you know it, you've frozen to death, buried in the snow. So it's that whole idea that, you know, you put risk at getting killed trying to rescue other people during a snowstorm. But the fact that they use a child as a form of luring you is pretty alarming. But it's interesting how much of her lore is her wanting to be married, involving children. It is said that the original Yuki-onnas were women who either died in the snow or during the winter months, or whose husbands had left them to poverty, or just left them behind on some level. Whereas the newer variants are deceived and murdered, so they're more, you know, malicious. It's just, there's a bit of a romance kind of vibe to her, though. But despite it all, she is a interesting being who sort of crosses a lot of lines with the old hag, our Queen of Winter. The blue hag of winter kind of vibes, but yeah, that's day 2's advent calendar. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and look forward to day 3.